Thank you for the warm applause. Today I'll tell you a bit about next level testing. In this talk I'd like to focus mostly on the human side of testing, how you can use your tests to connect with your colleagues, with the business side of your company. So let's dive in. There will be some technical aspects, don't worry. I'm Dirk Nederveen. You can follow me on the Toot site. I've been a Pygrunn, well, I've just been told since 2014. I'm a husband, and I'm a father to 3 great kids. And I finance those hobbies with being a streaming engineer at Jetstream. So, as one does these days, as a start, I asked ChatGPT for some quotes. And as you expect, ChatGPT botched it. There are 2 actual quotes, although the date is wrong, the reference is wrong. ChatGPT can't do this. Luckily, we're people, we can do this better. Well, as we see, especially in the second quote here, the goal of software testing is to ensure that the system meets the requirements, functions correctly, and can withstand the expected load. So we see several things. A bit about the formal specification and guarantees. Or is it documentation? Because if you enter into a project, a new team which you're getting on board in, looking at the tests, see what's going on, how do I actually use the library, this program, can be greatly of great clarification, but it's not meant as documentation. But in all 3 things, all 3 of these areas, good tests can help. And you would say, why would I want to test? Is it because you like to test? Or do stakeholders, the business side, ask for it? Probably not. If you put testing time on your timesheet, people will raise eyebrows because, wow, isn't that wasted time? You should be developing new features. Is it because your team lead says you have to test? Probably a bit of all of these. And most of the time, tests are about the question, what should the system do? Highly technically oriented. And we often think about testing as a technical activity, but I would like to show you that it's mostly a human activity. And this is not a new idea, because Harold Abelson, in his great book, The Structure and Interpretation of Computer Programs, also the name of a course based on this book, taught on MIT, he said in 1984, when, well, my project was still in the inception phase, definitely not in the development phase, programs must be written for people to read and only incidentally for machines to execute. I probably quote this once a week. I look at Marijn to ask for some verification there. Because what we do when we develop a system is we distill knowledge into artifacts, and the code is our artifact. Now, code is highly technical. Its function is, what should this do? We codify the business rules into code. Now, tests can tell us a bit more about a view from outside. And that's the question we're interested in that situation is, what should the system mean? And that's slightly different, but also important. Tests and all code should be written for humans. And that way they become good stories. And good stories take you along, they draw you in, and they tell you about how the world should be. So, what is it that makes a story great? Well, there's good content in good stories. And usually stories start with a title. It's a memory hook. what's this about? Often the title is about a superhero. When you think about Iron Man, the movie, or the comics, the title clearly says this story is about Iron Man and his adventures, or misadventures. Also good stories, in their content they have a plot. Things are happening. There are story arcs, one or many, and at the end there is a resolution to those arcs. Sometimes not the resolution you want, but there is resolution. And also there are characters. There are main characters, and main characters usually have tenets that are relatable. When you're engrossed in the story, the main characters are the ones you feel most with. And the side characters have to be believable. They come on stage, there's introductions, and they have interactions with each other, because people do. Well, good stories also have good form. In good stories, there's cohesion. And for example, in the superhero comics, within the series, there's cohesion. Characters that return, villains that may come back as a surprise. But also within titles, there's cohesion. There's usually one larger story arc and several smaller ones. But also within chapters. Comic books rarely have chapters, but other works of fiction usually do. And within chapters, there's also smaller story arcs that are being built up, sometimes left hanging, and at some point, there's some resolution. But also at the lexical level, the language level, there's paragraphs, sentences that go together, that belong together. And within sentences, there's definitely some structure in that a sentence is about some things. If you have too long sentences, like I tend to do when I speak, you get lost. The cohesion is broken. Stories also in their form have evocative language. When my 4-year-old tells me about his day in school, he tells about, I played with the bricks today, and in the afternoon we played outside, and then the people from BSO came to pick me up, and that was good fun, and I played with, well, there's a lot of and. It doesn't really evoke feelings. It's a translation. It's like people in a stand-up reading their agendas. No one understands, I guess. But when I ask him, what did you build with the blocks? Then come the stories. He built a fortress for knights, or a fortress for cars. Who knows, he's 4 years old. And stories in their form are also self-contained. In that, in a series, there's characters. Sometimes different titles in the series refer to other characters, but they live in a universe. And within that universe, there is some self-containment. It's in a sense closed. When there's references, you can look them up. And that's about the question, how much is the reader supposed to know up front? And does the reader have enough context to find out what the references are about? Now we're getting into the more technical part. Because test stories also have good content, I hope so. And it starts with titles. Because we declare our test classes. And well, for example, closely to the Jetstream codebase is the account view set test. That's a great title, isn't it? Because it's a test, says so. It's about a view set of accounts. What does it do? What are we testing? Compare that to, well, mutations emit queue messages test. Now we're talking. Something will be happening, and I have an idea what it will be. So in our plot, in test, we see a specific thing happening. Usually that's one line, maybe two. This is the function we are testing. And there's resolution. There's an assert statement, one or more, to verify the story arc. Did it resolve well? Did it resolve in the way we expect or want it to be? And then there's content, there's characters. Usually objects being created. We have main characters, often in a setup function in the Python unit test framework, and there are side characters who usually have smaller story arcs, and they have within the test function. And often, for example, if you for an account API, if you want to filter, then the heroes are usually the elements you want to see in the output of your account API, and the villains are specifically those accounts you don't want to see. Well, let's have a bit of a Zen moment. I need one myself. Luckily, we have the Zen of Python. Namespaces are one honking good idea. Let's do more of those. Because in our test form, we have series. We can divide things up so that they form logical, cohesive elements. Let's do that in namespaces. Just add a little sub-package within your test package to see, well, what's going on. We have account tests, but we also have account tests specifically pertaining to the queue messages that they emit. In titles, I like to use, in my test titles, in my class names, a mix of snake case and Pascal case. Why is that? We don't do that in Python land. Why? Because my titles are usually longer, slightly longer sentences. It's not just the superhero names. They have some adventure. And titles tend to have either a subtitle saying, this adventure are we having today? And then there's chapter titles. We test some functionality. You can get around the test prefix and the test suffixes for class names and chapters, but as we're using Python unit test, we may as well keep those. And there's also within test functions, within the paragraphs, within the sentences, there is cohesion. Because everyone intuitively places double line breaks within their code. Because we have an intuition. These lines go together and these lines go together. In tests, that's often the case that this is a great point to make a break and think, are these actually two tests? Do I need this line break? Do I need this paragraph? Or can I make this story, can I condense this story to be shorter and give my colleagues and myself in 6 months more clarity about what this is about? And of course, there's sentences. Should I make long sentences or can I make them shorter? Can I tell in more detail what it's about? And evocative language. For example, names. Names are evocative. If we have a setup function with our heroes, Iron Man and Thanos, well, Thanos is a bad guy. If we call them user 1 and user 2, if I reference them in a test, will I still know who's the hero, who's the villain? I can use their names. And, well, I'm using superhero names, but within your company, there's probably some shared lore, things you all like. Whether it's Monty Python characters, you can go endlessly with cheese shop references. Or, well, superheroes. At Jetstream, we like to make airplane jokes. Guess why? So there's a lot of things that you can spice up your names and make use of shared context to evoke to evoke clarity with yourself and your colleagues. Well, tests can also be self-contained, because do you really need a large test database? I know Django testing framework helps you with setting up a database and tearing it down every time. Makes them quite slow. Do you really need that? Do you need fixtures, data defined elsewhere that you use in your tests? Can you make those fixtures within your test to provide the context to the reader at the location that they're looking? Do you need your test to run in a specific order? Because if one test sets up a story arc and then another test needs the story arc to be set up before finishing it, do you want that? Can you run those tests in isolation? Or can you change your test that the story arc spans a single test function? This is why I like to do an activity called story refactoring. And I think refactoring is something from the TDD vocabulary. And I think from the red-green refactor loop, the refactor part is often most misunderstood, but also the most important. And the refactoring is about the big changes and the small changes. The big changes, that's what we think about when refactoring. Change a framework from X to Y. But the small changes, in isolated spots, making things just a bit better for myself to work in, as I often like to call it, some X grinding, because, well, if I have sharp tools, I can chop a lot better. I can do some wood chopping a lot better and faster. And in story writing, there's the saying, kill your darlings. We like to produce code. Then we feel productive. Heads up to Guus. But removing code is often a lot better for ourselves, for our colleagues, probably for the system. Try to make it as simple as possible. Make it from long to short and boil it down. Distill your code, distill your tests until only the things necessary are left. So let's go dive in a case study. This is some actual code from the Jetstream test base, in which we have a test with a great name, create without output asset name. Well, there's already something going on there in the title. And first we have our character introductions. We have a queue, which represents, it's a mock for a RabbitMQ system. If you want to know more about mocking, please go to Case's talk just in this room after this. And there's a job, helpfully called Job. Job uses the queue, and our story arc is actually here. Job enters the database. And then there's another character introduction, because there's reference data, helpfully called test dict. The reference data, I couldn't find a real data emoji, so I grabbed for a robot. There's a Star Trek reference in there somewhere. And then there's some plot resolution. Can our hero, by entering the database, get our robot, our data, to the queue? Here we see some assertion, and we see some quite obscure Python syntactic sugar for, let's see if the base dict, so the thing we get out of our queue, is a proper subset or proper superset? A proper superset of test dict. It's probably not the clearest. I prepared this talk and I had to think about it. Think about that. And actually, in this test, this is a very, very, very important line. Would you have guessed? Marijn, you wrote this. Would you have guessed? So let's go for a bit and see. Here it is, without the character introductions. This is the, wow, already 5. Thank you. Let's go for this, and let's go with it together. Are there any opportunities for us to improve our character introductions or our story arcs? Well, Marijn, you wrote it.
Well, for example, what we want to test here is whether a name will be based on the asset that gets put in. But that's not really clear from the test name.
Yeah. So, shall we refactor this? That's not the one. What should we call it then?
I was not prepared for this.
Let's go for this. Jos. That's somewhere there's... That's cool. And then that means we should be changing things here. And I'm afraid that's not proper. Let's see for a bit. No. Oh, I diff is too long. Great. In that case, let's remove a bit. Not that bit. We're looking for proper subsets. Let's go for this. Oh, that works. That works because I didn't test anything now. Well, there's at least still the diff is still too long. Let's go for it. That's a long line. Black, save me. Is it running? Yes, it is. So now we say already mentioned it's derived. We derived a thing. What can we do more? I'm already nearing the time. I would have hoped to have had more time for this. Marijn will continue this. I'll put my slides online. There's several ideas in there to go through from the 34 lines we had to 3 lines. Let's finish this up. That's not the. That's the one I want. In conclusion, when we form better stories, we form our thoughts, we form each other's thoughts, we write better tests, and we come to better code. I would like to thank Jetstream for the slides feedback, Reveal.js for the slides framework, and you for your attention and questions.
Thank you, Dirk.